One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I have a great question for you. Hopefully, it'll spark a memory, spark a thought. And the question is, when is the last time that you really invested or investigated in a new revenue stream? And I have somebody that's got some ideas on some new revenue streams and some ideas outside the box. And I love outside the box thinking. And I have to say, this is the first time we've ever had royalty on because this guy is a mayor. He's actually the mayor of Podcast Town, and his name is LZD Flanard the Third. So, how are you, my friend?
Oh, well, I'm doing pretty good. I don't know about royalty, but I'm doing all right.
Well, hey, you're a mayor, so you're the mayor of Podcast Town. So, fill us in on what in the world is Podcast Town?
Yeah. So Podcast Town is a full service podcast agency. We work with B2B companies to create and tell their story so that they can grow revenue, brand awareness, and leads through podcasting.
And so we're gonna hit the ground running on this because that's a great intro. I mean, there's people listening right now that probably never even thought of being a guest on a show, maybe having their own show. I mean, how do we let's just kind of start there before I want to hear your backstory. But for somebody listening, what does that mean? I mean, it seems so daunting to be a guest, to potentially have your own show. So what do you say to those people, LZ, that are really kind of nervous about that whole thing?
Yeah, I have a declaration, Dave. My declaration as the mayor of Podcast Town is that in 3 years, if you are a business owner or a business leader, you will be in the podcast space in one of the following three ways. You will be hosting a show, you will sponsor or partner with a show or a podcast, or you will partner with them and as in terms of guesting on the show. But you will be in this space. It's that big of a deal, and it's growing that fast. And there's so much opportunity there that you will be in the space in one of those three ways.
Wow. Uh-oh. So, hey, for those people that are listening, don't turn us off yet because just because you're like, oh, no way, I'm never going to do it. You can resist as long as you want. The reality is, though, is that what LZ said is you're either going to be a host like I'm doing now. You're going to be a guest like LZ is here, and he again has his own show, and we'll get into all that. Or you may find yourself in that sponsorship opportunity. We have, we have people that sponsor our show, we have people that advertise on our show. And again, moving forward, this is such a great venue. And I think getting in early, like how long have you been doing this, LZ, for yourself?
I am what they call a dinosaur in the podcast space. I've been podcasting since 2016, so it's coming
Okay.
on a little bit over 8 years now.
And that's like an eternity for people, right? In 2016, people were like, "What?" That's like, "Hey, buy Apple early," they said, and for those that did, got in and did a good thing. We started our show in 2020, and we're 250 some episodes in, and it was funny because when we shut down in COVID, I love to talk to people, and I didn't even know what Zoom was prior to COVID. Nobody probably knew what Zoom was, right? A couple of
Mhm.
team meetings here and there. But I'm like, man, you know what I'm thinking? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be like, I want to talk to somebody every week. So I'm gonna try this thing called Zoom. Don't know anything about it. I'm gonna, find somebody that wants to talk just for like a half hour to get to know them, see if I can help them, see if I can introduce them to somebody, just try to make a connection. And then I'm like, shoot, you know what? As long as I'm doing this, I probably should record it because if he or she says something good, not that it's going to be me, if they say something good, I want to remember what it was. And then I'm like, crap, as long as I'm going to like record this, I might as well put it somewhere so that I have it. And as long as I'm doing that, I might as well let other people listen. And that was the journey for us in 30 seconds. What did your journey look like in 2016? What drew you to starting to get involved in podcasting?
It was almost by accident, Dave. I knew two things when I was a teenager. I knew I wanted a family, and I knew I wanted to own my own business. The plan was I was going to go to college, get a degree, get a job so that a self-respecting woman would want to marry me, have the, do the kids, get the job and all the stuff. And then the
Sure,
second, and I do mean the second, I could quit that job and do my own thing, that's what I was
yeah,
going to do. And
sure,
so that was the strategy. And so I activated the strategy. And so got a job, got married early, and I'm doing my day job. I'm working my side hustles on the side. The problem was it was really, really hard to make enough money with my side hustles to quit my day job. And
yeah,
after about 8 to 9 years of trying it that way, I came to a realization that I could try to do it this way for another 8 years,
sure,
or I could do something different.
sure,
That different thing was I need to talk to business owners because they have something figured out that I haven't figured out yet. And so I said, I got it. I'll start a podcast and I will ask them the questions that I need to know. Like when you were in my shoes, how did you transition from your day job? Did you tell
sure,
your boss that you were like, how did you navigate that world?
sure,
How do you market your business? Like all the things I needed to know, I would ask in
yeah,
the podcast. And that's how I got started. And let me tell you, after the first episode, I was hooked. I was hooked. I was
yeah,
like, this is what I want to do. And so that's
sure.
how I got into it initially.
Wow, that's awesome. I remember Wayne Breitbarth was my first guest, and he's a LinkedIn expert. And he was on the show, and I thought I was gonna like teach the world something, and it took Wayne and I about probably 9 seconds, 10 seconds tops, where I realized, oh man, I'm not here to teach, I'm here to learn. And so I have the honor every week, like I do right here with you, hanging out to learn from you and learn from people around the planet. But I want to go back to what you said there because I want to people to pick up on that. You were in your side hustle for 8 to 9 years before, and it still wasn't even enough for you. I mean, you look like you're 20 now, so that must have been when you were like 10. But it's like I'm thinking that a lot of people listening are kind of like breathing a sigh of relief because we have this thought that you can side hustle and within 6 to 9 months that thing's going to take off and then you're going to quit your job and you're going to make millions. That didn't happen for you. Do you mind sharing what your side hustle was prior to podcasting?
Yeah. How long is the show, Dave?
As long as you need, my friend.
So
Oh, there's
honestly,
multiple side hustles that you
oh
have.
my goodness. We would be here for a while, but in short, I've
Yeah.
done a few different things. I have a musical background, and so I
Okay.
figured, okay, I'm passionate about singing and rapping, so I'll be a recording artist, and I'll travel around, sing songs for people, and they'll pay me US dollars to do it. And it happened. There was a few people. They were like, yeah, we'll pay you US dollars to come in and sing for us, but just not enough to quit the day job. And so I
Yeah.
said, okay, maybe I can, cut my teeth in production and produce for other artists. So I had a
Sure.
production company for a little bit. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can be the record label and have artists under me and help them go out and do the
Sure.
stuff. And that worked better. So each iteration, each thing I would do would get a little bit better. I would make a little bit more money and a little bit more
Yeah.
money, but still not enough to, to break the threshold. And
Sure.
then I got this incredible opportunity. I don't know if you are a sports fan at all, but the ABA back in the 70s, well, before they merged with the NBA, was a
Hmm.
big deal. There was a
Sure.
legit league. And granted, they weren't what they were then, but the opportunity came to own an ABA team. It's the minor league team, the nostalgia of the
Sure.
ABA. And
Yeah.
so I bought a franchise and I gave it a go at that. And I mean I don't have to tell you how it ended because we wouldn't be here today, but it was the next step up. I
Sure.
made more money than I made in all of the side hustles previous combined.
Okay. Good.
I had the chance to fail publicly. So everybody knew that I failed. I
That's
had
always
the
fun.
opportunity to have to go in front of a room full of players and say, hey, guys, it's not going to pan out. We gotta
Yeah.
we gotta shut things down, right? I had to get the opportunity to speak to the press and say,
Yeah.
it didn't work out, and here's the reasons why. I got the chance to talk to the lawyers and the people who tried to sue me, and like
Wow.
got the opportunity to go through that, and
Sure.
it built my character. It taught me so much about business. It taught me so much about myself, and it taught me that it was the next step up, right? And so from there, I really just took that and I learned and I grew and I iterated, and I fell into podcasting, as I said before, after
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 years break because it nearly wiped me out. I mean, mentally,
Sure.
I was destroyed. I was devastated.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I was devastated. Financially, I was
Yep.
devastated. And so it took me a little while to kind of to take a pause and say, you know what? I'm gonna not do anything for a little bit, just regroup,
Yep.
regather. And then
Sure.
that's when the podcast opportunity came about.
Wow. Well, and those are brilliant things for you, the listener, and to think about, because if you don't have the capital, if you don't have the emotional stability, if you don't have that, that he's talking about, because again, on the outside looking in, it looks really easy to start a business. And I've seen people, they have an idea, they're doing it in their day job, and they think I can do this cheaper than who I'm working for now. They put up a shingle, and then they think, oh, that's all it took. And they think, man, these people are just going to flood over to me, and then it's crickets, and then they try to, it's a lot of short-lived companies because they don't have the fortitude, they don't have that, inside of them, that to stick it out. I had somebody on the show, LZ, that did this. You took 9 years. He got married, and 6 days later, he quit his job, didn't tell his wife, came home and said, hey, honey, I quit my job. I'm starting this new company. Fortunately, it worked out, and fortunately, they're still married. I wouldn't suggest that you do that. How was your wife through this whole thing? I mean, this must have been kind of an upsy downsy thing for her as well.
Yeah, I would say the side hustles, the biggest impact there was just my time, right? Because I was
Sure. Yep.
working my 40 to 45 to 50 hours a week, and then I would do the side hustle. But financially, we were okay because, both of us worked and I was bringing in revenue. Now,
Yeah.
when I quit and now the business was the only thing that's bringing in revenue, thankfully, we haven't had, historically a ton of hiccups that way. But I invited her for breakfast one day. I'll never forget. And we get to the restaurant, we sit down, and I told her, I said, Victoria, something I want to talk to you about. And she says, show me the plan. Because she knows me. She already knew what I was thinking and kind of where I was going.
Wow.
And so I laid out, okay,
Yeah.
here's what I'm thinking. Here's where I'm gonna get the runway from, and here's how many people I think I can get if I scale this. And she's like,
Sure.
okay, as long as you got a plan, and I trust you. We've been married for a little bit. At this
Yeah.
point, it's like, okay, as long as the business can support your salary that you were making in corporate, then you
Right.
know go for it. So she was supportive, and like I said, she knew just from conversations and kind of where I was, and the fact that I literally the two things. I wanted to be married, to have a family, and I wanted to have a business. And so
Yep.
the business was the side of the equation that I hadn't had yet. And so she was supportive and on board.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Victoria, from all of us that are learning and watching, LZ. We appreciate you giving him the opportunity. So, but don't give him too many opportunities, make sure he's still taking good care of you. So, um, but I want to fast forward a little bit. So now you jump, you see this, you have this passion for podcasting. Did you have it before? Because I see sometimes people are like, you know what, I don't have a passion, so I don't think I'm going to start, a side hustle, or I don't know anything that I'm so, life and death about. Did you have that? Like, did you know much about podcasting before you jumped in it? Did you see a passion that you had, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I had zero passion for podcasting. I mean, I knew what a podcast was enough to know that that might be a route to get to where I wanted to go.
Sure.
But funny enough, I didn't even put two and two together until one of my guests after one of my shows. we would banter and kind of talk about what do you got going on? What do you have going on? And I would share with them where I was and what I was looking to
Yeah,
do. And one day, the guest said, LZ, you're kind of decent at this podcast thing. You should help other people do it. And I said, huh. No, that had never occurred to me. I didn't have a plan or a strategy when I started the show. I just wanted to
sure,
learn, get information. And so
sure,
I
sure,
said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. So I reached out to somebody who I thought would say yes. And I said, hey, person, I'm gonna help people do podcasts. Can I help you do yours and you pay me US dollars? And they were like, sure. And that's how and that's how it was born. And then from there, of course, I'm studious. I'm a recovered engineer, so I did the homework. I studied on demand, and that wave. Right, this was right before Netflix kind of exploded, and so I saw that there was a need for specific on time, on demand content. And I really thought that businesses, especially, could benefit from that wave of new customer behavior. And so put together the business plan and thought about all the stuff that I could think about with the knowledge and information that I had at the time,
sure.
and started to really, really focus on that as a business and as a focus. But to your question in terms of passion, I have a passion for creating, curating, and elevating voices, period. So whether I'm
Okay.
speaking, podcasting, singing, whatever it is, it involves two things: my face and a microphone. So I knew that, and podcasting just came along really at the right time and was the right vehicle to exercise that passion.
Wow, that's great. So do you sing on podcasts for people, or is that something that I gotta pay a lot of money to hear?
No, you would probably never hear that happen, especially not on a podcast.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, LZ. I just had to ask. But interesting. So you say so recovering engineer, which is awesome. For the listeners now, we each week we use a disc assessment to help us with our guests. So we ask each guest to take an assessment so that we can better communicate with them. And so on LZ's very high on the C, which means very meticulous, very detail oriented. So I have a question to you, LZ. Did that kind of help you, or does that kind of get in the way sometimes where it's like good enough in podcasting is good enough, but do you struggle with that on your end that sometimes you're striving for perfection that can hinder an episode or your journey? Have you noticed that for yourself?
No, not for me, because I have this competing thing that goes on in my head. Because on one side, I'm creative. I am as strategically random as you will ever see.
Sure.
But on one hand, I'm like, okay, but we need an SOP to coordinate the strategy and the randomness. Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes some days the C wins, some days
Yeah.
the creative side wins. It's like, okay, what are we gonna do today? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see where the let's see where the day takes us. And then some days it's
Right.
like, no, you got this at 9 a.m., this at 11 a.m., this at 2 p.m.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and it works well because it allows me to be flexible but structured at the same time.
Wow.
In
That's awesome.
preparation, I don't like a script. I
Yep.
couldn't like it stifles me. I feel constricted.
Sure. Sure.
Give me three bullet points and let me be strategically random, and that is my happy place.
That's great. Yep, absolutely. So, a couple questions before we take a break. Do you think that there is on that personality side, are there people built to podcast, I guess? I mean, put it that way for people listening, because I've heard that too, LZ, where people say, I don't like to do that. I'm not good at it. I could never sit in front of an audience or I could never sit in front of a microphone. I don't know what to say. Is there a certain personality, do you feel, that's more successful at podcasting than others?
I think it depends on what you call success. If success means you're highly popular and you have a lot of listeners, then that's, I think, one type of podcast. I play heavily in the world of B2B. And
Yep.
so while personality matters and it counts, in B2B, it's more about how effective are you at asking questions. Asking the right questions to the right people at the right time to get the right answers and the right
Sure.
outcomes.
That's
So
great.
it depends on how you want to use the show. If you want to be Joe Rogan, then yes, there are certain
Yeah.
people that you can give them a microphone and they just have this natural curiosity, and they can draw people in through conversation. But if you're talking about as a business a relationship, the business development tool, that can definitely be taught and coached. And in fact, that's one of the things that I do a lot of is coaching folks around how to be comfortable, how to not hate the sound of your own voice. And video is huge now, so
Right?
not to
Yep.
nitpick, okay, lighting and all the stuff like because it can be a lot for people who aren't used to being in front of cameras and lights. And so to answer your question, it depends on how you want to use the show.
Sure.
But
Yep.
I think if you're a business owner, you have to be in the space. You have to get over all of those fears, and just
Right.
realize that you're building relationships and building trust. I call it KLT. Your know like trust factor, and so it's a necessity that you do that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, now you said Joe Rogan. Joe listens to the show, and every time he hears his name, I got to pay him money. So thanks a lot, LZ, for doing that. So Joe, I owe you money as always. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to go into this revenue stream. I want to kind of unpack that for listeners that again need to think about hosting, sponsoring, or guesting. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with the mayor of Podcast Town, LZD Flanard III. Okay, don't mess with the third. Is there a fourth on the way, or is there a fourth in the making, or what are we dealing with on the fourth here? Do we share anything like that?
There's a fourth. He is 9 years old, and I've
Oh,
already had the conversation with him that when he grows up and has a son, we don't need to guess what his son's name is going to be because we're on a good track here. We don't want to mess it up.
you may want to get a signature out of him because things change, and you may want to get that signature early if it was me. But
It's true.
that's
It's true.
cool. So let's I want to kind of shift gears. We're in the present day. Thank you for sharing how you got to where you are. That's awesome. So for somebody listening, they're probably still stuck on your in the next 3 years hosting, sponsoring, or guesting. So, and you talked about like coaching someone that's never done this before, and so there are a lot of excuses that people right now are coming up with in their head. I can't, like I said, I can't do this. I would never be able to do that. So, what are some simple things that people can do that are listening that might lessen the fear, get them on the journey? Because again, sometimes we think, hey, if I can't be Joe Rogan, again, I'll pay him more, Joe. If I can't be Joe Rogan in my podcast where I have millions of people listening, I have the best of the best guests in the world. I hit it out of the park. If I can't do that, then I'm not interested. Well, again, like you said, what does success mean for your show? It means for him, numbers and topics and sponsors and all that, great guests. But for the average person that may be in the B2B space, like you said, a business to business type space, what does success mean for them? Let's start there. Let's kind of work our way backwards. What does success mean for a podcast guest being on the show? What would that look? What would be a good, successful story there?
So the way I like to frame it is what I call, and I didn't coin this term, so I'm borrowing it. ROR, return on relationship.
Okay.
You're in business, that is the entire shooting match. You are there to build, maintain, and grow relationships. And so when you go into it thinking with that in mind, it reshapes and reframes how you think, how you go about preparing for the show, right? If I know if I'm going on a podcast that this host might potentially be a client, their audience who already has the KLT factor, like know, like, trust, I get a chance to borrow that without having earned it, right? It takes years to build that trust in an audience, and
Sure.
now you get to
Yep.
borrow it.
Yeah.
So in some ways, you're shortcutting the process of that KLT factor. So that's the surface, right? But if you even go a step deeper, it's like, okay, well now that podcast is going to be out there forever in
Mhm.
on the internet. So now you have backlinks to your website. You have the host. If you do a great job, maybe they'll ask you back. If you do a great job, maybe they'll refer you to other hosts. And so now you're building this network of people who have built-in audiences, and you're now exponentially multiplying your brand awareness, your influence, and your likability, your trust factor just from doing one show. And if you're doing it right in business, you're meeting people anyway. You're
Mhm.
building relationships anyway. Now you get to do it and get paid in ROR to do it. So that's one thing. The other thing is you get practice at articulating and sharing your vision in a way that's concise, in a way that's effective, in a way that moves people to action. That is the number one goal of guesting on the show. How do you move people to action? Now, what that action is can be different for different people. Maybe it's signing up for your email list. Maybe it's visiting your website. Maybe it's following you on LinkedIn or on social media. Whatever that action is, you can track that. I went on Dave Melinda's podcast, and 1,700 people followed me on LinkedIn. I would say that's a win. That's a big win. So for me, it's just a matter of framing, your ROR, why you're doing it, and what action you want to drive, and
Yeah.
and giving value, giving all the value. Don't hold anything back, because at the end of the day, if you're an expert in your area, you're not going to be able to give everything you know in a 1 hour podcast anyway. So show up, be valuable, and you will get a return on relationship.
That's awesome. And I think the caveat there, because again, LZ is so high in his C. He wants to get this thing laid out so well. And I'm not a C person at all. So I say, you know what? He's a ready, aim, fire guy. So he takes a weapon and he gets ready, cleans it up, puts it into scope, then he puts a bullet in, and then he gets ready, he aims, and then he fires. Me, shoot, I just fire the dang gun. And then if I got time, I'm gonna aim. If I got more time, I'm gonna get ready. Neither one's right or wrong. They have their own advantages and disadvantages. Be careful not to like spend the next 9 months getting ready, right? And that's what I heard as a high D or as a high I, because I'm like, oh my God, just jump in, right? So do you have people, LZ, that just are like jump in? Is there a danger of jumping in? I mean, can you screw this up? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on somebody that's like, hey, I just want to try this. So where do I go? What do you tell somebody like that?
Yeah, I think it's important, Dave, to know who you are and how you operate. Like I said, for me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm more of a ready, fire, aim, if that
Yep.
makes sense. So
Sure. Yeah,
and
totally.
then re-aim and then re-aim, calibrate, re-aim, think about it some more, and then re-aim and focus.
Yep.
But some
Yep.
people are like, I just want to jump in and swim. And if I almost drown, then great, because I learned how to not almost drown. So I think
Exactly.
you have to know your style and how you approach things. And if you are the type of person that you just jump right in, jump right in, jump
Yep.
right in. But I think the more important part is understanding, number one, why you're doing it and
Yep.
what outcomes you want to drive, and then mapping to that. Now, I will say, if you just jump in, you're going to make a ton of mistakes, and it's going to take you longer than if you
Sure.
plan. But I
Good
would
point.
rather you do it, take those lessons, or hire somebody to help you not make the mistake,
Yep.
than to wait 9 months and do it. So just depends on your personality type and how you approach things. But
Yep.
done is better than perfect. And you learn so many things by making those mistakes. So you really can't, there's no bad way to do it. There's
Right.
just there's a long way, a shorter way, and a shorter way might be different for you than it is for
Sure.
me.
Yep. And there's a fun way and a not fun way. It's not fun to make mistakes. I've mispronounced people's names. I've said, I mean, I've done them all. LZ, the mayor, of course, never does any of that. We know that
Of
the mayor's
course, I've
perfect
not
in
made
all
any
the
mistakes in the 8 years.
exactly. Since 2016, the dude never made a mistake. I get it, right? But I think what's interesting, I mean, LZ brings up a really good point. You can do it or you can at least consider the why. I would at least suggest for the high I people that just want to jump in, and do something, the results oriented D people. If you just want to jump in and just do a podcast, you can do that. I think the why is good because the why will kind of it'll coincide with your message. Because if you're just, not a lot of podcasts are successful if they just talk about random things and there's really no topic, or there's really just, again, the rich people. My buddy Joe Rogan, he can do that because he can talk about anything. It'll make news, it'll make YouTube explode. He can just do that, right? Most of us can't do that. And so if you have a why, at least there's like some cadence, to your message. There's an end, there's a middle, there's, like we've started here today. We started talking about LZ's early years. Now we're talking about what he's doing, and we're about to talk about, what his future looks like, and how he can help the listener. So we do have a cadence, but along the way, you're able to kind of maneuver however you want. So I just want to encourage people listening. Number one, seek out the mayor because he's going to be able to help you, because it is daunting to try it yourself. I'm just going to say, if you never have done it before, when because we've had some first time people on our show, and I basically had to walk them through at a different pace than, LZ and I were on for 90 seconds roughly before we jumped into our podcast, because he knows what to do. I know what to do. But if he had never done this before, I want him to be comfortable. He needs to realize that, hey, these aren't live. So if you do screw up, we can edit. I mean, there's just all these pieces that you can kind of work through. Do you help people as the mayor of Podcast Town, LZ, with their why? If somebody's not sure of what that is do you guys offer that kind of assistance to get people concrete on that why?
For sure. In fact, that's probably the foundation of what we do when you think about strategy and coaching, because it's literally impossible to build a successful winning strategy if we don't have a strong why.
Right.
Because
Oh,
it's like, well, where are we going, right? What's our vision? What's our mission? If we don't know why we're doing it, then all of that stuff is kind of out of the window. So our thing is we want to make sure that you understand why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, where those
yep.
people that you're doing it for are, how we're going to reach them, and what is the outcome that we're seeking to get to. And so but the why is foundational. It's incredibly important.
That's awesome. I always make this analogy. So I think about, for the golfer, anybody that understands golf, imagine if I invited LZ to this brand new course. I mean, the thing is gorgeous. I mean, it's the best golf course that you've ever seen. It's meticulously laid out. It's just, cut to the tee. And you stand up at the first tee box, and I say, okay, buddy, tee off. And he's like, so where's the green? I go, well, there isn't a green. There's no hole, there's no green, just tee off. I mean, that's how it is without a why. You're just kind of you don't know where you're going. Any road will get you there. So I love that piece, LZ. I think for people listening, at least be concrete with your why, whether it's to make money, whether it's to grow your business, whether it's brand awareness, whatever it is for you. Maybe it's just purely getting over a fear. Maybe you have a fear of speaking. Maybe you want to improve your eloquency, whatever it is. Just be crystal clear on what that why is, and then you'll have way more success in the process. So I love that you shared that. So as we start to land, I want to just talk about your book. So you have this book called The Flame Starter: The Art of Self Mastery. So kind of fill us in on what that book's about.
So the book is all about how to be a high octane, what I call flame starter entrepreneur without dying. And I say
Oh,
that
there's a little simple thing without dying.
uh,
Well, that's good. Good.
but but that was my experience. I was, as I told you earlier, I was working my day job. I'm working these
Yeah.
side hustles. I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. I'm stressed out. And it literally almost cost me my health. And
Yeah.
so I wrote the book to give people a foundation on how to recognize when you're burning out, how to deal with the things that as entrepreneurs we don't deal with. We don't deal with childhood traumas and things that carry over as adults and show up in our business in different ways. We don't live in the moment. We don't, because we're so busy, we're so driven and passionate about what we're doing. We miss so many of those things in life. And so I have these LZ-isms throughout the book that I share that kind of help set a foundation and guide you through that process of really introspectively looking at you so that you can master your purpose.
Wow. And there is where the brakes go on because so many entrepreneurs don't want to take the time to look at themselves.
Mhm.
Super easy to look at others, super easy to blame the government. We can blame our team, we can blame the competitor, we can blame our customer. It's really hard. So I just want to acknowledge that for anyone that is struggling with that, what he just said. It is hard for an entrepreneur to slow the roll and be able to introspectively look. But he's got this principle: education times motivation times inspiration equals transformation. So it's hard to have a company transformed or a team transformed, or quite frankly, you being transformed as a leader without the education. That's a great component. Without the motivation and without inspiration, you can't really get to where you want to get to in that transformation piece. So, where's a great place for us to get a copy of that book, LZ?
Yeah, so if you just go to my website, lzflennard.com, we have a tab where you can get a little bit more information about the book and then order it right from there.
Well, and I wanted to bring this up because I had a discussion with your son, and he's concerned that there's no three after your name. You kind of stole LZ Fernard, Fernard on as a website. Where's he supposed to go now? What's he supposed to do for his site? What are you thinking here?
So see, Dave, I've considered this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna buy the domain edf3.com.
Okay.
It's available, and then he can buy edf4.com.
Okay. Well, for all you excited, go right now to GoDaddy and buy those, and now you
No.
can sell them to LZ. So there's your new revenue stream. Again, we started this with kind of a revenue stream. So I saw some of that on in prep for today that you talk about revenue streams, maybe different revenue streams. How does podcasting fit into that? If somebody's really thinking about a revenue stream, how do those two tie together for us?
Yeah, so without boring you with all the different things, right, that you could do, the biggest thing I tell people is, again, a reframe. Your podcast is a media company. It is a media brand, right? And what that means is there's opportunity in terms of your podcast email list. I always recommend that you separate it from your main company email list. I know it's a lot of work, but
Sure.
you'll thank me later. So that's an opportunity for monetization. You can also sell ads to that newsletter. You can sponsorships and things like that. There is the audio and video ads that you can put in the podcast itself. Partnerships are huge. So if, let's say, Dave, you want to sponsor my show, I sponsor your show, we do an
Yep.
event together, things like that
Sure.
are huge, especially in B2B, because there are partnerships that you can forge downstream and upstream from your supply chain, right? That makes sense, that are synergistic. There's a ton of opportunity that way. The other thing is just your own products and services. That is going to give you the biggest ROI. But again, we talked about the know, like, trust. The podcast's job is to serve value to the 95% of your audience who are not ready to buy right now,
Sure.
and be able to tell when they are converting to be the 5%. They already know you, they already like you, they already trust you. Now it's just a matter of assigning a value and a level to how you're going to serve them, and now they're already in your ecosystem.
Sure.
There are other ways, but those are the main ways in terms of
Okay.
when you think about business to business,
Yeah.
that you can monetize the show.
That's awesome. Well, and going back to that know, like, and trust. So let's get as real as we can. So let's say one of the listeners sells whatever, pick a product, right? If you a lot of times people are like, why would I buy from you? What makes you different? Where are you adding value to me as a customer? Things like that. Well, if you do not have a podcast, you've never been on a show, you don't sponsor, you can't really use that to your favor. And I think, like, for us, you know, listennotes.com says that we're in the top 2.5% of all podcasts in the world. So if I tell somebody that is considering me for whatever, and I say, hey, I have a podcast and we're like 250 episodes in, we're in the top 2.5% in the world, that adds some credibility. That increases that trust. So the people listening, you can say, "Hey, I've been on podcasts. You want me to send you, a snippet about me, or you want me to send you the whole episode?" Like, I love that. It's a marketing piece. It's a tool that is relatively easy to do. You'd press a button and LZ does the rest once it's all done. Then the mayor takes over and boom, this great thing shows up. So I would just encourage people listening, if they haven't considered that this is a great way to separate yourself from your competitor, especially if you're in a high competitive zone where it's all about money, or there's no relationship. Why not just get outside of the norm and start to create your own path? Because I think that there's some great opportunity there. And I'm just curious, LZ, are you working with people that are maybe outside of the norm? Their industry doesn't have podcasts, or it's not normal for them. I'm just curious, like, what your experience has been with the kind of the off the cuff type of people.
Can I give you one stat before I answer that,
Yeah,
Dave?
for sure. Love it.
So one thing to consider is two stats. I'm sorry, I lied. Two
That's all
stats.
right.
So 74% is the number of podcast listeners that buy things from hearing their favorite hosts recommend them.
Wow.
74%.
Shoot.
So you talk about shortening your sales cycle,
Yeah.
right? And when you do get them on the phone, they are already primed to buy. So your quality of lead skyrockets, right?
Yep.
Your sales cycle shortens. I don't know what the exact number that is for your business if you're watching or listening, but that's a big number. If you shorten
Yeah.
that sales cycle by 60 days even,
Sure.
and
Yep.
if that lead comes to you and they already want to buy, there's no convincing needed, that's a
Yep.
significant number. The other thing to consider is about 70% of business leaders get their buying recommendations and information from podcast hosts. And
Gotcha.
podcast hosts are now the most trusted media source.
Wow.
That's thinking. Podcast hosts, not TV analysts, not radio, like podcast hosts. So
Right.
now to answer your question, we work mostly B2B, but there are some instances where we've had nonprofits that will take on because we are very community centered. We believe that where there's community, there's opportunity to add value. I believe strongly as a value that when you add value, the dollars come. We are not a nonprofit. We're running a business, but that's how we
Sure.
approach business. Is we are all about how do we add value, how do we connect people, and how do we get them to the next level. And so we have done work with nonprofits. We've done work with universities, Marquette, University of Wisconsin Extension, and folks like that outside of the traditional B2B. And then we have a couple
Sure.
of just dudes that were with us when we first started, and so we keep helping them. So yeah, but our bread and butter is B2B, but we work with the projects and the folks that we find value in helping, and that we know we can get them results.
Wow, that's great. And nobody on this show that I know of does not want results. Now, results mean different things to different people, and sometimes we want an instant result. Again, like I referred to earlier, the first podcast that you're on, your inbox is not going to fill up with purchase orders. If that happens, please let me know,
Which one it was?
because I
Yeah.
want to know what you did to make that happen, because I'm totally jealous of you. So, that's awesome. Last question for you as we land. What's your tip of the day for somebody listening, LZ? Maybe it's something that we covered, maybe it's something burning in your heart, but what would your tip of the day be for somebody listening?
Yeah, I love that question, and this is totally not related to podcasting. So if that's bad, then let me know. Just don't
Oh,
invite
it's
me back.
great.
But I'm really
Eat your
big.
greens? Is it gonna be like eat your vegetables? That's what my mom would say. So if it's that, we've already heard that. So you got to get a little more creative than that one, LZ.
Got it, got it. I think I can. I think I can.
Okay.
So the thing that I always tell people is master you to master your purpose. Because then it doesn't matter what it is. If it's podcasting, if it's your business, if it's a relationship, whatever it is, the key to the whole equation is where you are in that season and what your assignment is in that season.
Sure.
Purpose changes. My purpose today, at this age, is not the same as it was when I was younger. My
Mhm.
assignment in this season of my life is not the same as it was last season.
Sure.
You have to be able to understand what season you are in, and you have to understand what season you are not in. So know purpose, is the key to the game.
There it is, the mayor of Podcast Town with his words of wisdom. What a great way to end this. So, I want to just make sure people can figure out how to connect with you because I know there are people that are like intrigued by this concept. We just kind of scratched the surface. And so if somebody wants to learn more about hosting, sponsoring, or being a guest on a podcast, what's the best way for people to connect with you, LZ?
The easiest way is LinkedIn. That's where I live. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, we can chat. We can figure out if there's opportunity for me to add value to you or for you to add value to me. So that's the easiest way.
Perfect. And it's Elzie. That's his first name. That doesn't not LZ like the two letters. It's LZ and then Flenard, Flenard. Is the D in on your LinkedIn or not?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
But
cool.
if you
So
if
it's
you type in
LZ.
LZ Flinnard, there's not a ton of us.
Well, there's a fourth that's kind of irritated
That's
about this
true.
website
That's
thing.
true.
I'm just going to tell you as we land this plane today. So thanks, LZ, so much for all the impact that you're having around the planet with your people that are learning and growing in podcasting. And again, for somebody listening, please don't just jump in to your next activity. Take a minute and just ponder what was said. And if you're moved, reach out to LZ. He also has his podcast called Journey to Mastery. So again, listen to that. There's hundreds of episodes there. Great opportunity for you to keep learning. And I can't wait to keep learning from you, LZ. Thanks for all that you're doing and appreciate your time.
Right. I appreciate being here.